Well, another year has gone by and I've had yet another great year of gaming. I got myself another video game system, and thanks to that, I expanded my video game library even more so than last year. I can even go as far as saying that I think this year of gaming for me is a lot better than last year. And that's saying a lot since last year's list introduced my favorite game of all time. So now that 2014 has come and gone and it's now 2015, I think it's that time again. It's time for me to count down my top 10 favorite games that I played in 2014. And keep in mind that the game doesn't have to be released around the year 2014, I just had to have played the game in question sometime around 2014. And like last year's list, if you guys want to, go ahead and list off your top 10 games that you played in 2014. I'm more than happy to know what games you guys got into this year. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's get the last bit of memories of 2014 out of the way and forgotten. In a good way, that is. These are my top 10 games that I played in 2014. If there was any game series where I thought I'd handled the good karma, bad karma scenario quite well for video games, that series would have to be the Infamous series. These games definitely get the job done when it comes to making good and bad decisions which impact the story of these games depending on what decision you make. And as far as superhero video games come into place, these are easily some of the best superhero games I've played in quite a while. And that's saying a lot. I've played the Batman Arkham games and Spider-Man 2. But while I do enjoy both Infamous 1 and 2, I slightly prefer the second game more than the first game. Infamous 2 is definitely better than the first game because any of the problems that I had with the first game were all improved on with the second game. First of all, I really hated the enemies from the first game for somehow having precise 100% shooting accuracy and having to rely more on melee attacks than your projectile electric attacks. And no matter how many times you use your projectile attacks, they never seem to take the hint to just fucking die. This became unbelievably irritating and cheap real quickly to the point where it felt like you were fighting the enemies from Jak 2. And trust me, those enemies were pretty unforgivable. The enemies in the second game, on the other hand, were much better and were much more forgiving. Hell, the melee attacks were much better too, giving the protagonist, Cole McGrath, the Amp, which is basically a baton that contains Cole's electric powers that can inflict some neat combos and melee attacks to the enemies. The good and bad karma system for this game is a lot better too. You see, the first game only has the good and bad karma just to make you more good or evil. That's it.
Lame.
But in Infamous 2, they give you extra superpowers depending on if you choose evil or good karma. If you do more good karma actions, Cole gets some ice power with his electric powers, but if you do more bad karma actions, Cole gets some fire power with his electric powers. I really do think that the fire and ice powers that are included really do suit the bad and good karma system in this game. Infamous 2 is easily one of my favorite superhero video games, and it's home to the best good karma, bad karma system in video games as of now. I'm pretty sure Infamous Second Son is even better than Infamous 2, but until I get a PS4, which most certainly won't happen anytime soon because of how damn cheap and poor I am, I'm gonna enjoy this fantastic superhero game until then. Ever heard of Kid Icarus? Yeah, probably not. It was a video game series made way back in the late 1980s. It only had 2 video games during the time, Kid Icarus and Kid Icarus of Myth and Monsters. But as time went on, many people forgot that this series even existed. Probably because Kid Icarus itself wasn't that well known for its time, and it was unmemorable and easily forgotten. Hell, the only reason why people know about Kid Icarus now is because the main character, Pit, was the playable character in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And I'm pretty sure we all know how popular and successful Super Smash Bros. Is. But now that people know what the Kid Icarus franchise is thanks to Super Smash Bros. Brawl, people were now wondering if Kid Icarus will get another game. And in 2012, that question was answered in the form of Kid Icarus Uprising for the Nintendo 3DS. Kid Icarus Uprising has 2 different gameplay styles, one of which starts at the beginning of a level and the other starts at the halfway point in each chapter of the game. You start off shooting enemies like those old shooters back at the arcade days. Then you go out on foot and the game then plays out like a third-person shooter. Although, while the gameplay for Kid Icarus Uprising is clever, it's also quite awkward. You have to use the L button alongside the DS touchscreen as you walk around or fly around using the circle pad on the 3DS, or a 2DS in my case. An interesting way to play a game at that, but pretty confusing. It's pretty weird to use only the left side of a 3DS and having to use the DS touchscreen in order to play the game. But on the plus side, even though it was a bit odd at first, I got used to it after a while. But, oh, this game isn't well known for its gameplay. No sir, this game is well known for its characters and writing. My god, this is probably one of the funniest games I've ever played. There's always something likable and or funny about every single character in this game. Whether it's the funny and witty protagonist Pit, the sexy and lovable goddess of light Palutena, Pit's clone dark doppelganger, Dark Pit, the incredibly bossy but still pretty likable Verity, and the troll himself Hades, there's always something cool, funny, and lovable about all the characters in this game. If you're looking for a game that has some of the most clever writing out there along with some great characters, then this game is definitely for you. Well, Kid Icarus Uprising is certainly doing a good job bringing back the Kid Icarus franchise as of now. Let's wait and see what the next game in this series will bring us. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table with Kid Icarus. And judging by how awesome Kid Icarus Uprising is, I'm sure they won't let us down when they make another Kid Icarus game. Whenever the hell that'll be. I'm going to be completely honest here. At first, I wasn't interested in the Uncharted series at all. They just never really sparked my interest when I first heard of Uncharted. The only reason why I heard of this series in the first place was because PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale had the protagonist from Uncharted as one of the playable characters from that game. But once I spotted the first 3 games from this series at a very low price at my local GameStop, I just decided to say, fuck it, and bought the Uncharted trilogy as well as 2 other games. And, to my surprise, upon playing the first game, it was pretty damn good. The only way I could describe Uncharted from what I played from the first game is that it's kind of like Indiana Jones. You play as a treasure hunter named Nathan Drake as he discovers the coffin of one of his ancestors, Sir Francis Drake, and upon further inspection, he finds a diary from that said ancestor that leads to El Dorado. Yeah, sounds like a video game version of Indiana Jones to me. The game plays like a third-person shooter combined with a platformer as you travel through several dangerous parts of your surroundings. You fight off baddies, solve puzzles, and do several life-threatening predicaments that no other human being would have the balls to do, such as climb up several feet up of a mountain and escaping crumbling platforms. As for a guy who's never really seen much of Indiana Jones, this was pretty impressive, I must say. I like the adventurous feel that this game gives me. It literally does feel like you're going on an adventure finding treasure and trying to do your best to stay alive at any given moment. However, the last few levels of the game, to say the least, are a bit annoying. Not going to spoil anything for those of you who haven't played Uncharted, so let's just say that you'll be dying in some of the cheapest, unfair ways you can even imagine. I have played the second Uncharted game, and I will say it's honestly a little bit better than the first game from what I played, but I've only gotten through the first 2 chapters of the game, unlike the first game which I fully completed. So I don't think it would be fair to choose the second game over the first one, especially if I haven't completed that game yet. You can consider it an honorable mention though. As of now, the Uncharted series has gotten me involved in all of its adventurous treasure hunting awesomeness. I'm really looking forward to finishing the rest of the second game and getting the chance to play the third game this year to see the rest of what Uncharted has to offer. Here's to the video game version of Indiana Jones. Well, the male version, that is. So, back in 2013, I got introduced into a franchise I've always wanted to try out sometime soon. That franchise being the Devil May Cry series. And if you've seen my top 10 games I played in 2013 countdown, you'll know that I put the first game on that list. So, once I finished the first game, I immediately wanted to play the rest of Devil May Cry and its devil hunting, demon slaying awesomery. And I did just that. I was able to complete every single one of the Devil May Cry games in 2014. And my favorite of them all comes down to Devil May Cry 3 and 4. I loved both of these games more than the other games, not only because they had the best incarnations of Dante himself, but because I thought they had the best to offer in the series. Back then I did choose Devil May Cry 4 as my favorite of the bunch, but now I decided to go with Devil May Cry 3 as my favorite game in the series, and the game that gets the next spot on this list. I definitely thought that this game had the better story, the better weapons, and most certainly the best cast of characters Devil May Cry has delivered upon me. Devil May Cry 3 is actually a prequel to Devil May Cry 1 as Dante opens up his new unnamed shop. Then, all of a sudden, a gigantic tower rises from the ground which contains Dante's brother Virgil. So now he has to fight off demon after demon to reach the very top of that said building so that he can defeat his brother. Devil May Cry 3 handled everything better when compared to the rest of the series. Sure, the plot is pretty basic, but it's still an enjoyable one at that. It had some of the best boss battles in the series, with an exception or two. The hack and slash feel in this game is so satisfying. And like I stated earlier, the characters are the best. Especially Lady. She's the best female DMC character. Oh yeah, I prefer her over that bland unoriginal bitch, Trish. Devil May Cry 3 is easily the best game in the DMC series and is one of my favorite hack and slash games I've ever played. But before I end this off, I might as well give my opinions on the rest of the games in this series, seeing as how I played and finished every single one of them. While I did enjoy the first Devil May Cry game enough to put it on my top 10 games I played in the 2013 countdown, its story was pretty uninteresting and weak. But it's safe to say that I had loads of fun with the first game. The fourth one is the second best game in the series. It has the best incarnation of Dante, the inclusion of the character Nero in that game was a nice touch, and it too has some of the best boss battles in the series. However, the entire second half of that game is nothing more than just playing the other half of the game but backwards. In other words, backtracking.
Oh, my favorite!
And that's a real shame too, since Dante was at his absolute best in DMC 4. This game too gets an honorable mention of its own despite that downgrade. The DMC Devil May Cry reboot game is easily one of the most overhated games I've played. Sure, the characters are not the best, especially this terrible piece of shit. The story is nothing spectacular, and the boss battles, with two exceptions, are not that good. But the gameplay and the darker tone of this reboot is what truly makes up for that. IMO is the third best game in the series, reboot or not. And there's Devil May Cry 2. Yeah, we don't talk about that game, like, at all. Let's just forget that that game even existed. Since the following video game contains music that has copyright infringement on it, I won't be taking any chances by using any of the music from this game. So it looks like you guys will just have to stick with the Heavy Rival theme from PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. If you want someone to blame YouTube's stupid copyright bullshit. The Metal Gear series has somewhat piqued my interest. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a series that I most certainly wanted to try out, but I've always wanted to give the games a try. And remember back in my Uncharted segment where I said I bought 2 other games along with the Uncharted trilogy? Well, one of those games just so happens to be the next spot on this list, and it just so happens to be another hack and slash game. Motherfucking Metal Gear Rising. Metal Gear Rising takes place 4 years after the events of the 4th Metal Gear Solid game. And this time around, instead of controlling Solid Snake, the players control a different character, Raiden, a cyborg ninja who wields a deadly katana. Although while the game is still a hacker slasher for the most part, it still has its fair share of stealth moments. It's a cool transition to be honest, since the enemies will instantly try and go after you unless you're well hidden, which gives you the perfect opportunity to sneak up behind some sorry unlucky bastard and instantly kill them. It is so satisfying. So, in other words, this game has some awesome combat controls. One thing that this game most certainly does an excellent job on is the boss battles. Despite how difficult they may seem at first, Metal Gear Rising's selection of boss battles are some of the best bosses I've ever faced off against. They test your skills quite well and you definitely love to slice and dice these guys with so much anticipation. All of them are so enjoyable. With one major exception.
You're an asshole!
Also, the music selection for this game is absolutely kick-ass. I can't sample some of the songs from this game because of some stupid copyright bullshit, but it's music that I can definitely headbang to in my spare time. Seriously, look at Metal Gear Rising's soundtrack after you finish watching this video. It's amazing. Like with Devil May Cry 3, this truly is one of the greatest hack and slash games I've ever played in my life, along with the rest of the Devil May Cry series and the 2 No More Heroes games. I'm really looking forward to playing the rest of the Metal Gear games, if I'm able to find a copy of them that is. So I must have to say thank you to Metal Gear Rising for introducing me to the Metal Gear series to begin with. I just hope that the other games are just as awesome as this one. This may be unoriginal of me, but the next segment is a tie between 2 games. Yeah, I know, I did the same thing last year, how freaking idiotic of me. Anyway, since these 2 video games are from the same video game franchise and I love playing both of them so much that I couldn't choose between the 2 of them, I think it's only necessary if I put them both on here. So here we have Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, and Sly Cooper 2 Band of Thieves. Like I mentioned last year, I got into the Sly Cooper series by playing the third and fourth games of this franchise, and afterwards, it became a franchise that I instantly loved. So I was able to find the HD collection on the PS3 that contains the original Sly Cooper trilogy that was on the PS2. Playing the first two games just increased my love for Sly Cooper and made me wonder why I didn't get into this franchise to begin with. So let's talk about the first Sly Cooper game, aka Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. The first Sly Cooper game was released on September 23, 2002. It was developed by Sucker Punch, who were also the creators of the infamous games. It starts off the origins of Sly Cooper himself as he tells a backstory on how he lost his father in a book that contains skills from Sly's ancestors called, well, the Thievius Raccoonus has been torn into several pieces by the Fiendish Five. This resulted in him ending up in an orphanage where he met his two best friends, Bentley and Murray. Now that they're all grown up, they team together to find the Fiendish Five members so that Sly can regain the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus and avenge his father's death. The game plays as a 3D platformer combined with stealth as you travel through point A to point B, while also hiding yourself away from enemies so that you can sneak up on them and eliminate them. At the time when this game was released, this was really clever and creative. Nobody has ever heard of a platformer combined with stealth before, so, as you can imagine, this was a huge hit. Even to this day, I still think it holds up pretty darn well, with its clever concept and gameplay, entertaining boss battles, and introducing us to some of the deadliest and intimidating villains in gaming history. I still have my fair share of fun when it comes to the first Sly Cooper game, even if I don't think it's as good as the later installments. Now let's talk about Sly Cooper 2 Band of Thieves. Sly 2 takes place after the events of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus.
Gee, thanks for the obvious, Einstein.
It's basically the same as the first game, but with a few new gameplay elements added onto it. Whereas the first game has you playing as Sly for most of the time, Sly Cooper 2 has you playing as Sly himself, Bentley, and Murray. They all have their fair share of strong points and play totally different, which is essential for completing certain parts of the game. There's also a health bar added onto this game. The first game had a stereotypical one hit and you lose a life scenario, but the second game introduces a health bar so that you can take multiple hits before dying. This would also be used in the later Sly Cooper games and will more than likely stay that way. The plot is also pretty good, just like the first game. Which reminds me. After the events of the first game where you defeat the Fiendish Five and get all the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus, Sly and his friends must now find all the parts to Clockwork, who was the final boss of the first game, so that he doesn't end up being reconstructed and pose as a threat again. So the gang must go after 5 members of a group called the Claw Gang who are holding parts of Clockwork for their own selfish desires. This really does feel like a necessary sequel, and not just a sequel to be made just to cash in on the first game. This game does a good job on adding some well-needed extras that the first game needed by including the awesome Sly Cooper gameplay, the extra content it offered, better boss battles, having a plot that was definitely interesting that followed up the events from the first game, and its great set of likable characters. Except for one of them.
You fucking whore.
Overall, both of these games were great experiences and totally helped me grow into the Sly Cooper series even more. While these two are nowhere near as awesome as the fourth game, I'm more than proud to say that these games totally made me appreciate and love the Sly Cooper series even more than I already have. Now to just wait for the 5th game to be announced, which hopefully won't take another 8 years or so. I hope. Did I ever mention that I love the Ratchet & Clank series? If not, I'll say it again. I fucking love the Ratchet & Clank series! The games have become some of the best action-packed fun I've ever experienced before like no other. They always give me a lot of entertainment with every single game that comes out, and there's nothing really that bad I can say about the games. Trust me, if the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise never existed, then this would totally have been my favorite video game franchise of all time. But after the success of epicness that was Ratchet & Clank A Crack in Time, aka my favorite video game of all time as of now, they released 2 spin-off games, Ratchet & Clank All for One and Ratchet & Clank Full Frontal Assault, or Q-Force as it's named in other countries. While they were decent games at least, they weren't nearly as fun as the main series games. They were still pretty enjoyable, but they didn't have the charm and epic space traveling fun that the other games had. So in 2013, Insomniac finally made the 4th and final installment in the Ratchet & Clank Future series. That game is called Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus. unlike All for One and Full Frontal Assault, Into the Nexus plays like the original main series games. You adventure through different planets in third-person point of view as you collect epic weapons, battle many different foes, and try and stop the main villain of this game, Venture Prague, as she escaped from her prison on a ship, and now it's up to her favorite dynamic duo to find her and place her back in prison. Just like the other games, it still contains its awesome adventurous feel that the Ratchet & Clank series is well known for, as you travel planet to planet to try and complete your objectives and collect as many badass weapons as you possibly can to destroy many different enemies in your path. Like with the Crack in Time, Clank himself also plays a huge role in this new addition to the game called the Netherverse stages. And that's Netherverse, not Negaverse. I knew you were wanting me to make that Sailor Moon reference. Anyways, these parts of the game are kind of like puzzles that you have to solve as you play as Clank to try and contain a nether in the Netherverse, no pun intended. And this game even has some of the things we love the most in all of the other Ratchet & Clank games, like upgrading your awesome weapons, and even having a battle arena so that you can win awards by doing different challenges. Yeah, this game was definitely the breakthrough Ratchet & Clank needed, because I don't know what would have happened if they made more games like Full Frontal Assault and All for One. But this game has one major flaw, that being its length of being too short. Now, I'm perfectly fine with a game being short, but at the same time I wish this game could have been a bit longer like the other Ratchet & Clank games. I mean, this game isn't as short as Quest for Booty and Full Frontal Assault, but it can still be beaten pretty quickly. But that doesn't stop me from having so much fun with this game as the other Ratchet & Clank games did. Since this is the last game for the future series for this franchise, I'm really curious as to where Ratchet & Clank will go from here. I heard they're going to be making a game based on the movie that's going to be released this year, and I'm really interested in trying it out, as well as checking out the movie. But other than that, we'll just have to wait and see where the Ratchet & Clank series goes from here. Stay strong, Ratchet & Clank. Keep your awesomeness going. Super Smash Bros. Is my favorite fighting game franchise. It's always a franchise where I can get in the fighting mood. Forget it. You know the build-up. You all know that the next game on here is Super Smash Bros. 4. This was probably a game you all expected to be on here from the very beginning, seeing as how it's that one video game everybody talks a lot about nowadays. But I most certainly had to put this game on here somewhere. But seeing as how I don't own a Wii U, nor have I played the Wii U version of Super Smash Bros. 4, I'm only going to be talking about the 3DS version of the game. I know that the Wii U version is more than likely a lot better than the 3DS version and it has more content, but since I own a 2DS and I'm not expected to get a Wii U anytime soon unless I could get some hard-earned money, I'm only going to be talking about the content the 3DS version of this game has. Any of you guys had problems with Super Smash Bros. Brawl? Well, you're in luck, because any of the problems that Brawl had, like the unnecessary slipping, have been removed from this game. Let's not forget that we have more bonus features in this game, including Classic Mode, All-Star Mode, 3 different Stadium matches, and the exclusive 3DS feature of this version of Super Smash Bros. 4, Smash Run, which is like the adventure mode from Kirby Air Ride. Some of the characters have also gotten some well-needed upgrades since the last games. Characters like Yoshi, who's always been my main since the first Smash Bros. Game, has gotten an upgrade on his fighting style and has been better than he ever was before in the other Smash Bros. Games. And characters like Bowser, who I hardly ever play as, has become one of my newest mains with his new and absolutely better fighting style upgrade. Let's not forget that this game has the best selection of newcomers Super Smash Bros. Has yet. Sure, it's disappointing to see characters like Snake, Lucas, Wolf, and the Ice Climbers go, and I still wish some of the characters I wanted got in, but with the newcomers they gave us, I'm still damn proud of this character roster. Some newcomers include Rosalina and Bowser Jr. from the Mario series, Palutena and Darkpit from Kid Icarus Uprising, Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles, Greninja from the 6th generation of Pokemon, and some newcomers that absolutely took me by surprise like the Duck Hunt Dog, Littleback from Punch-Out!, the Wii Fit Trader, Mega Man, and the one and only motherfucking Pac-Man, just to name a few. You can even use any Miis you created and make them a fighter as well, which is something I always wanted in Super Smash Bros. Along with some new content to unlock, bonus modes, and just having a fun match against your friends, Super Smash Bros. 4 has truly become an excellent fighting game. If I'm able to get a Wii U and a copy of the Wii U version of this game, I'm sure I'll love Super Smash Bros. 4 even more. But until then, I'm going to enjoy every last minute of the 3DS version. Let me tell ya, I had a feeling that this game would be awesome, but I had no idea it would be as awesome as what I experienced. Super Smash Bros. Just keeps getting better and better with each new game of the series that comes out, and the 4th game most certainly proved that. And something tells me that when the next Super Smash Bros. Game is announced, they might give us more surprises than ever before. miniature quiz for you all. Ever heard of this game right here? Yeah, I figured you guys wouldn't. Anyways, this game is called Solo to Robo Red the Hunter. It's an action RPG game that was developed by CyberConnect 2 on October 28, 2010 in Japan for the Nintendo DS. You're in a steampunk world that consists mostly of anthropomorphic dogs and cats, or as they're called in this game, Caninus and Villanicos. The main character that you play as in this game is a Caninu named Red, a 17-year-old mutt who lives his life as a hunter who suffers from amnesia. Don't worry, he's not one of those typical characters that suffer from amnesia. This is a character with amnesia that's actually done right. The game has you traveling around in a 2D and 3D world doing several types of puzzles and jobs as you travel around in Red's primary source of transportation, as well as his primary weapon, the Dahak. This is where we start talking about the things I love about this game. The Dahak is a great combination as both a weapon and a source of transportation. You can use this thing to pick up items as well as enemies and throw them. You can unleash some neat combos with this machine, and it's pretty damn fun to use. The more you defeat enemies with this machine, the more experience points you'll get, which will make Red and his machine stronger and will increase his health. And as the game progresses on, you'll be able to get more abilities that you can use with the Dahak. But there may be some cases where Red himself will have to travel out on foot, giving him the chance to swim, climb up ladders, immobilize enemies with his stun gun that he carries, and activate switches, which can't be done while in the Dahak. The characters are another excellent part of this game. This quite possibly has some of the greatest characters I've ever seen in a video game. Whether they're funny, intelligent, or cute, these are some of the best variety of characters you'll come across in video games. At least for a DS game. Not going to spoil much of the plot for this game since it's just one you have to experience for yourself, but let's just say you'll be going on some high-flying adventures in this game. Kind of like how you go on adventures in Ratchet and Clank, only you use a machine as your primary weapon. There's also something I think you guys should know about this game. You see, it's very hard to even find a copy of this game. You know games like Xenoblade Chronicles where it's incredibly hard to even find a copy of said game? Yeah, Solo to Robo is one of those games. The only reason why I was able to get my copy was because I bought it online. Thank you very much, Amazon, my lord and savior that was able to find me a copy of this game. Thank you very much. So by the time this video ends and you're interested in getting this game, you're going to have to go to places like Amazon or eBay to get your copy. Not only that, but I feel like this is one of the most underrated games I've ever played. Sure, when it comes to reviews, this game is a success. It's actually well praised by critics. But aside from that, hardly anyone's ever been able to talk about this game. Which I guess makes sense seeing as how this game is rare to find nowadays, but still, I honestly think this game should be talked about more. I really do think it's that underrated despite all the well-received reviews. And as you could possibly figure out, yes, I truly love this game. A lot. This is just a game that you all just have to experience for yourself. It's that good. The characters are wonderful, the gameplay is incredibly fun, the story is really interesting, it's just a blast of fun for the DS. However, we still have one more game to go. What could be more awesome and exciting as Solo to Robo? Let's find out. But first, here are some honorable mentions. So, what game do I enjoy the most more than a game in one of my favorite video game franchises of all time? A game in which many people are considering to be the best game of 2014 as well as one of the best fighting games, and a game that I consider to be incredibly underrated. Well, the game I picked not only blew my expectations through the roof, but it also gave me so much enjoyment to the point where I didn't want to put down the fucking controller. It was really hard to get this game too, since I had to use Microsoft points on my Xbox 360 to buy it. My favorite video game that I played in 2014 is this little gem called Dust and Elysian Tale. I literally have no words to describe how awesome and truly amazing this game is. But you know what? I might as well try to do my best. Dust and Elysian Tale is an action RPG beat-em-up game that was first made for the Xbox Live Arcade on August 15, 2012, which would later be available for Steam and the PS4. And now the first thing I must talk about is the visuals for this game. Goddamn. Just goddamn. This game looks absolutely amazing for an Xbox Live Arcade game. They look like something out of an animated movie and you're in control of what goes on in the animated movie. This honestly has to be one of the best looking games I've ever seen in my entire life. Alright, so the game has graphics that look amazing, but does it have good gameplay? People, this game doesn't have good gameplay. This game has outstanding gameplay. The game plays as a 2D side-scroller and, as mentioned earlier, plays like a beat-em-up combined with an action RPG. The combat in this game is some of the most satisfying and entertaining combat I've ever had the privilege of experiencing. I can even go as far as saying this is probably my favorite beat-em-up game ever. Does this game have great characters? Yes, it absolutely does. Like Solo to Robo, the characters are absolutely outstanding in this game. This game has some of the best cast of characters I've seen in a video game, just like Solo to Robo's characters. There's the titled character Dust himself, an absolute badass. Fidget, one of the cutest characters ever seen, along with Yoshi and Tails. The Blade of Ara, Dust's primary weapon, who's always good at giving advice to Dust on his journey. And of course, let's not forget that shopkeeper who bears a similar resemblance as the shopkeeper from Resident Evil 4. I can't really think of a thing to really hate about any of these characters because they're all written so well and they all have at least one thing that's likable about them. Also, the story is a pretty damn successful one at that about how Dust is trying to remember his past. Yeah, it's one of those games that has the main character go through amnesia. But, like with Red from Solo to Robo, Dust's amnesia in the story actually works. You actually want to know about Dust's past, and it's not one of those cases where the amnesia doesn't make any goddamn sense. If a video game could get amnesia right, especially when it's rarely done right to begin with, that's quite an accomplishment. Dare I say this is probably the prime example of how to do a story that has a character go through amnesia done the best. Yeah, take some hardcore, well-written lessons, shouted the edgy I'm such a tool hedgehog. Dust and Elysian Tale is my favorite game of 2014 because I absolutely feel like this game does pretty much almost everything right. It's just so incredible and entertaining in every single definition of the words, with its beautiful design and graphics, epic as hell combat, well done story, and absolutely tremendous characters. No other game in 2014 could come close to this game's level of awesomery. Truth be told, I actually wanted to make Solo to Robo my favorite game I played this year, but in the end, I thought Dust and Elysian Tale was much better. While all the other games I played this year were enjoyable enough to make it onto this list, even as an honorable mention, Dust and Elysian Tale sticks out the most in comparison of the other games on this list. And all of this is why the Golden Award for the best game I played in 2014 goes to Dust and Elysian Tale. I'm the Hedgehog Ninja, and I know I'm a little late to say this, but happy 2015. I had a great time with the video games I played in 2014, and I hope I continue to have a great time with the video games I might play in 2015. Maybe 2015 might just be as good as last year. Sure, the characters are not the best, especially... My phone went off. Okay then.